We, the people of South Africa, have journeyed far and still have a long path ahead of us. Our triumph over apartheid shows that when we unite for a single objective, we can achieve great things. South Africa is a nation full of potential, possibilities, and people with the will to make a difference. We are a multicultural nation, and it is this diversity that makes us unique. We are strong, we are innovative, we are practical, and we want the best for our children. On the 27th of April 1994, when we voted in our first elections, we began our journey of freedom. Since 1994, great strides have been made in improving the lives of our people. Access to services has increased, the economy has been stabilized, and a non-racial society has begun to emerge.
If you think back to 1994, we've come a long and sometimes difficult journey, but we're certainly much further ahead. That's when we started defining the white papers and changing our legislation to be ready for a real democratic South Africa. And now we are in a place where more people have housing, access to electricity is on the whole good, people have water and sanitation. Of course, we've still got many challenges to go, but we're actually in an amazing place as a country, thinking about where we came from 20 years ago.
Millions who were previously excluded have access to education, electricity, water, healthcare, housing, and social security. About 3 million more people are working today than in 1994. The poverty rate has declined, and incomes have grown steadily in real terms. But freedom brings new responsibilities. No political democracy can survive while a large percentage of its people remain in poverty, undereducated, unemployed, and without any hope for the future.
The last 20 years, the South African economy has grown at just over 3% per annum, close to 3.5% per annum. This is more than double the rate that was achieved in the last 20 years of apartheid. It's very close to world average economic growth, and it's faster than advanced country growth. And by that score then, I would say that the last 20 years for the South African economy has been a period of good progress.
South African politics, if you look both pre-94 and post-94, as are probably most political systems, significantly defined by ideology. And the ideology of the post-94 government has been extremely flexible, in my view, in practice, although from time to time it's become a bit more focused to take a particular line on issues. I would say it's been very pragmatic and much broader than many might have expected. We've built great companies that have done very well, both here and globally. And so the question is, what's the next generation look like? But it's probably not going to be in mining and manufacturing, at least for the moment.
To take a practical approach to the work of building a better South Africa, government, business, and civil society leaders have developed and committed to implementing a national development plan, which is a vision for South Africa for 2030. This National Development Plan provides a golden thread which brings consistency and clarity to our plans and roles.
We also wanted to ensure that we could build a program that represented a broad South African view and not just narrowly a government view. So in the same way as the Planning Commission is established of people drawn from outside of government, we could take the plan across all segments of society. Certainly in the context of Parliament, we also used it to engage all political parties and win their support. And all of that was very important to get the idea of a national development plan off to a good start.
Government has crystallized the NDP into certain targets, but they're still very high-level targets. So they're targets about growth, about employment, and about the kind of society that we want to see if the NDP is implemented. Now, it's not a perfect plan. It doesn't have all the details. And most importantly, it needs a lot of thinking and resources to make it operational.
It contains a broadly stated vision with options that are available to us as South Africans to turn into a plan or plans. And I think that's how we should approach the NDP.
I've always described it, even when speaking in Parliament, as our national wish list, because those are the things that we desire for our nation. And if it was implemented as it is on this diagnostic plan, there's no doubt about the fact that we hope that there'll be an improvement, in the economy of the country, that there'll be improvement, in the problem of joblessness.
Significantly, it is in the interests of South African businesses that we actively address the many social challenges, including the vast inequality that exists in our country. The reason is that inequality raises the cost of doing business, it skews market structure, it limits growth opportunities, it breeds mistrust and tension, and it ultimately drives down the bottom line of a business.
I think the first thing is that we've got to agree that a prosperous and growing economy and a prosperous society is in the benefit of everyone. It's in the benefit of labour, it's in the benefit of government, and it's certainly in the benefit of business.
You then have a role for business to play in stepping up and saying, we will also commit our resources to financing what needs to happen. We will also lend our talent to this great project.
I think the various sectors, together with our government, should look at how do we arrive at practical steps or projects, programs to get us on that journey.
What that means for business leaders is that they need to be striving all the time towards growing effectively, towards investing, towards growing, towards creating jobs, and towards becoming effective and productive, because the more productive they are and the more efficient, the more the environment will become conducive to more businesses, and that's ultimately what we want.
What this government, the fifth democratic government, has done was to take the plan which looks out to 2030 and develop off it a medium-term strategic framework which sets targets for 5 years.
What the government effectively has done is to look at the options contained in the National Development Plan, and out of those options has decided what the priorities are for itself, in setting targets such as 5% growth by the end of the current term, and unemployment over the next 5 years should fall to 14%. That investment by the public and private sectors as a proportion of GDP should rise to 25%. And the fact that our reserve energy capacity should rise to about 19% over the next 5 years.
It's a kind of level of growth that we've never achieved so far in this country, certainly not since 1994. And that requires a different way of thinking. It requires doing things differently.
Any business that operates in South Africa has to accommodate our context of poverty, unemployment, and inequality, because the failure to do such an accommodation is bad for business.
If you're employed and you have a good job and you eat a good meal and you have warmth in your home during winter, you should be very worried. Our society is too unequal for that to be sustainable, and so it's all of our problem.
I think what the NDP sees is an inclusive society where everyone participates in the economy, where there's mass entrepreneurship, where small business plays an important role.
So if we can take this as our blueprint, businesses can start to stand back and say, okay, if this is where we're going as a country, what does that mean for me? What does that mean for our sector? What does that mean for our industry? And start to put the building blocks in place to achieve that 2030 vision.
The economy is what gives life to a democratic project in South Africa. It is the oxygen of our democracy, and business can play a huge role in helping bring this about. Unfortunately, for many, I think there's a level of disaffection, there's perhaps a bit of withdrawal, and then there's the panoramic opportunity of looking elsewhere, where we look around the continent of Africa, we look globally, and companies say, gee, I can make twice the return if I invest here or there. Back in South Africa, well, it's complicated, it's getting more difficult, so let me look elsewhere. I think that's extremely unfortunate. And we all should be looking first as citizens to say, home base is home base. Let's build this economy, and let us be active partners in doing that.
To fix the 25% unemployment problem, we need small business to boom. Big business can be conscious and concerted in their efforts and initiatives, that they do what is possible to help small business thrive.
It'll be about business saying, fine, we will support new entrepreneurs, not just in terms of finance, but in terms of access to our supply chains, in terms of procuring from them, recognizing that there will be glitches, that performance might take a dip in initial phases, and that there'll be a cost to it. But for the long-term benefit, we will do this.
Working with government, we must get the basics right, such as ensuring that we implement government programs efficiently, holding one another accountable, and finding innovative solutions to complex challenges.
When that starts to happen, government must take accountability for the areas which it enables. So business can't really grow unless government puts in place the enabling factors for business to grow. The right kind of infrastructure, the development of skills, education, upliftment of communities, that is government's central role. And in that, it will create a place also for labour to flourish, and I think we'll see a lot more of cohesive behaviour between business, government and civil society than we do at the moment.
Government cannot solve South Africa's challenges by itself, nor can business shoulder the burden for change alone. Across South Africa, citizens have to share the responsibility of bringing about positive change. As the National Development Plan states, it is something we do together as South Africans from all walks of life.
The only way the social and economic ailments of South Africa will be permanently fixed is through active citizenship. And the active citizenship, the easy place to flag is the three big components: labour, business, government. But what sits underneath government and labour and business is you and me.
So it's fine to talk about an active citizenship and an active citizenry, but it does require maturity on the parts of all of us, the public, the government, civil society, etc.
Social fabric is built and woven. It's not sprinkled magically overnight. Only you and I can do it. And who's you and I? Every single one of us.
Because of the central role that businesses play in shaping a country, the business community has tremendous leverage with which to positively influence other spheres. Businesses can take constructive action instead of remaining silent or passive to ensure that we all work towards the interests of our society.
Business models its response to the NDP, to what the government has done. It independently can itself decide what it is. It needs to take from the National Development Plan to improve its own profitability, and therefore to create conditions for growth and employment creation in our economy.
Today, many of South Africa's companies are global leaders in sectors like civil construction. We also have rich mineral and natural resources, a sophisticated financial and business services sector, and proximity to fast-growing African markets, in addition to having high-quality universities and a modern, productive agricultural sector. Growing these sectors and creating jobs will mean intensifying the country's global presence in areas where we have a competitive advantage, while building the necessary infrastructure and skills that we require at home. Central to achieving this and growing faster in a more inclusive manner, South Africa will need a higher level of capital spending. This means that gross fixed capital formation needs to reach about 30% of GDP by 2030, with public sector investment reaching 10% of GDP to realize a sustained impact on growth and household services. Both the public and private sectors can play important roles in building infrastructure to unlock the economic potential of the country.
We need to decide what can we be best at in the world. And we should choose a few things that we can be best at. To do that, we need to look at what are the requirements of our own country, what are the needs of our continent, and what are the needs at a global scale, and see where do we have the opportunity to be most competitive. And then we need to unite behind that. This is what bold decision-making is about. It's about saying we understand that all sectors play an important role in an economy, but these are the sectors that we're going to stand behind as a country.
By stimulating more business, this economy will create more jobs, and in creating more jobs, my client base will grow. The total wage bill will grow, the economy will grow. It's that kind of shift from expedient decision-making about how much I can take out by way of stock options, by the conclusion of my contract in 2 or 3 years' time to something that actually takes a slightly longer horizon on what transformation in the economy is about. That's a shift we need, I think, across the board, whether you're in trade union, whether you're in government, or whether you're in business.
Progress over the next 2 decades means collaborating, working together effectively, and doing things differently. The top priority of leaders and citizens must be combating poverty and inequality within their sphere of influence. This means raising living standards to an appropriate level, which involves a combination of increasing employment, higher incomes through greater productivity, continuing to provide a social wage, and good quality public services.
We can then start linking in to small businesses, linking in the value chain to suppliers, to interacting in a broader way in that sector. And that will have a knock-on effect on more and more businesses being created. And once we're best at those few sectors, we can then take on more and take on another one and tackle another one. But we haven't yet worked out how to be best in 1 or 2 sectors, and I think that's what we need to do.
All of these challenges are interlinked. Improved education, for example, will lead to higher employment and earnings, while more rapid economic growth will broaden opportunities for all and generate the resources required to improve education. If we reach these goals, we can achieve the ambitious targets set by the National Development Plan of creating 11 million jobs by 2030.
What is the role of business in a mixed economy, or what is the role in business in a state-led economy? So when I go to Singapore, I'm seeing a business community led by the state, in which they are partners with different objectives, both contributing to building the nation, but both in very different ways. One in the public sector and the others in the private sector, with a lot of communication between them. So there's overall a grand strategy in a place like Singapore and in other countries, Dubai or Taiwan, where the state plays this planning role like China. In South Africa, I don't think we have a coherent, integrated approach. And I suspect that much work needs to be done on good communication and partnering and improving the levels of trust and understanding.
I don't think it's rocket science. I think there's just a few key things that have to happen. One thing I know that should not continue is this relentless conversation about what should happen. We have all of these ideas now, and it's all rolled up into the National Development Plan. And some people have issues with aspects of it, etc. But it's a good roadmap.
We have good leadership in the private sector, in government as well, etc. And it is true that if there is no ambivalence in implementing such, for instance, a plan as the National Development Plan, this country can go forward.
I would say to business leaders, they should look in detail at the plan, not at the summary, not at the executive piece. They should look in detail at the parts of the plan that are relevant to them. So if you're a financial services institution, look at what parts of the plan speak to what the financial services industry needs to do. Take that as your starting point. It's not finalized, it's not complete, it's your starting point. And then work with your industry. Work with your industry to develop that vision further. Take it back to government, have a conversation, say, is this where we want to be going? And then work out what your organization's responsibility is in taking that objective further.
We can't imitate what other people do. We have to learn from what they do, but we can't imitate. Many of our solutions are going to be uniquely South African. And I think we must be prepared to persuade each other in that context.
The National Development Plan has 6 interlinked priorities that we should aim towards. They are uniting South Africans around a common program to achieve prosperity and equity, promoting active citizenry to strengthen development, democracy, and accountability, bringing about faster economic growth, higher investment, and greater labor absorption, focusing on key capabilities of people and the state, improving government's effectiveness by building a capable and developmental state, and encouraging strong leadership throughout society, such as by teachers and nurses and all South Africans, to work together to overcome our challenges.